Hello, everyone. As I'm pretty sure all of you are aware, we were not always this quote unquote perfect union between states and government. We had this period between or during the Revolution and before we had the Constitution known as pre constitutional America. That is what my presentation is on. I would like to cover that area of time and era. Now, a little bit of an overview of the pre-Constitution. We had our first form of government, which was the Articles of Confederation. There were many problems that came with it, which I will be going over later on in the video. We had the Constitutional Convention. Rhode Island had a factor in that. Good or bad will be determined later in the video. So did George Washington, and there were also much of known framers, which will also be covered later in the video. Then later, we came up with a three-pronged government with the judicial, legislative, and executive branches, those of which I will not be covering within this video, which they will be covered, will be or have been covered by another student. Now, Articles of Confederation. Why was it weak? Articles of Confederation was weak due to its lack of power, in summary. They lacked the power to tax their states. They had the power to print money, but not the power to collect it. The reasoning behind this was because the states did not want a tyrannic government such as England, where they had a monarchy and just ran off that. What had to be improved about it? Basically everything. If you look in the Constitution and then at Articles of Confederation, you'll find very little similarities between the two. Why did it get ratified? Because at the time people thought that a weak central government would be the way to go, and in essence it honestly was not the proper way to go. Because, as you can probably tell, we're not running on the Articles of Confederation, we are running on the Constitution. As I said before, the general idea behind it was the weak central government and nothing really supporting it. It was just an alliance between the states that sounded like it came from some sort of TV show. In summary, Articles of Confederation was a really just essentially weak document due to the extremely weak central government. There is no power to tax or enforce federal laws needed to both run the government and run the nation. Because in order for them to run the nation, they had to have taxes and other forms of income for a central military, which they did not have. And there was complete power in the states and the people. The states had completely different opinions due to different backgrounds, and no central basis to go off of. And below there you can see that it got ratified due to the general idea of it being a weaker system of government and more favorable to the people rather than the tyrannical government that England had. The idea was that the framers wanted to get away from the overbearing monarchy, and inadvertently they ended up taking it to the opposite extreme and had an overbearing democracy. The ideas of a new government were that this government that they had with the Articles of Confederation just was not working, and they needed to have some sort of centralized government. So they decided to hold a constitutional convention in Philadelphia at Pennsylvania State House. And this State House was actually later known as Independence Hall, where the Declaration of Independence was signed, just only a good 11 years later, or not later, earlier. There were a total of 55 delegates in attendance representing all 13 states except for one, Rhode Island. They refused to send representatives because they did not want powerful central government interfering with its economic business. This is rather ironic because it comes to the fact of throwing away your vote if you want something not to happen, vote against it rather than voting for it. And that would help you get that thing not to happen rather than just, oh, hey, I don't want to come. In the end, the delegates were known as the Framers' Constitution, and George Washington was elected as the first president by unanimous vote. Some of the more popular framers, if you will, were people such as Benjamin Franklin, who was the oldest actually at age 81. There was also Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, John Jay, Samuel Adams, John Hancock, and Patrick Henry, who was known for Give Me Liberty or Give Me Death. Credits here are visuals by me, slideshow by me, speaking by me, sources, well, you can ask Mr. Mingy from our Works Cited page. And if there was one last thing that I wanted to add, is that, in summary, Articles of Confederation were bad. They did not work. They were weak. Constitution was formed later and ended up being a much stronger central government, which also didn't quite overbear onto the states and gave them enough power to themselves. So now I am going to show you a video from Crash Course on Articles of Confederation.
So today we're going to learn why the green areas of not America didn't copy us. Alright, so as Americans may dimly remember from history classes, the constitutional system we've been living under since 1788, the year of the first presidential election, was not the original American government. The first government set up by the Continental Congress was called the Articles of Confederation, and it was, in a word, bad. In 2 words, it was not good, which is why it only lasted 10 years. The problem with the Confederation is that it wasn't so much a framework for a national government as it was a firm league of friendship, which unfortunately only sounds like a team of Care Bear superheroes. The Articles set up a government that consisted of a one-house body of delegates, with each state having a single vote, who, acting collectively, could make decisions on certain issues that affected all the states. There was no president and no judiciary. You can try to tell me that John Hanson, the president of the Congress, was the first American president, but it's just not true. Any decision required 9 of the 13 congressional votes, which pretty much guaranteed that no decisions would ever be made. Ah, supermajorities, always so efficient. But besides the 2/3 requirement, the Congress was very limited in what it could actually do. The government could declare war, conduct foreign affairs, and make treaties. Basically the stuff you need to do to go to war with England. It could coin money, but it couldn't collect taxes. That was left to the states. So if you needed money to, say, go to war with Britain, you had to ask the states politely. The Articles could be amended, but that required a unanimous vote, so 0 amendments were ever passed. The government was deliberately weak, which followed logically from Americans' fear of tyrannical governments, taxing them and quartering soldiers in their houses and so on. But here's the thing, weak government is like non-alcoholic beer. It's useless. That said, the Articles government did accomplish a couple things. First, it won the war, so yay! Unless you were a slave or a Native American, in which case, you know, probable boo. Second, the government developed rules for dealing with one of the most persistent problems facing the new nation: Ohio, which was called the Northwest, presumably because it is north and west of Virginia. Getting control of the land meant taking it from the Indians who were living there, and the Articles government was empowered to make treaties, which it did. Crash Course World History fans will remember the Athenians telling the Melians that the strong do as they can and the weak suffer what they must, and the Americans definitely went to the Athenian school of treaty making. Through treaties signed at Fort Stanwix and Fort McIntosh, the Indians surrendered land north of the Ohio River. The biggest accomplishment.
And that was my presentation. Thank you for watching.